And we're in beep 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 Joe Rogan. Sorry, I just have to do it.
Steal from
Uh,
the best, and you can beat the best.
all right, this is the Dawdlers philosophy podcast. Something. It says it on the top. Anyway, I'm Ryan, and this is,
Harland.
and we're Dawdlers. We are doing a podcast, and we think we know why, but we're not quite sure. We're gonna find that out, I guess. Um,
What do you mean we're
yeah,
dawdlers? Should I be offended by this?
probably. Uh, what I mean by Dawdlers is not a good, I don't have a definition. So I mean, there's a definition out there. You could probably find it, Oxford English Dictionary or whatever. But what I really am trying to say is uh, we don't hustle. We're not the kind of people that are maximizing effort towards our passion. We're putting some effort towards our passion, and that's what this is. This is
Well, that's
uh,
not nothing.
well, that's not nothing. Yeah, exactly. I would agree. It's not nothing,
Is that our
but
subtitle? The
it's not.
dawdlers philosophy. It's not nothing.
I think that would be perfect. We'll put that up there now that this is being recorded. And by the way, this is like the third or fourth time we've tried this. We keep hitting snags that only hustlers would acknowledge. Because, I mean, not hustlers, shit, dawdlers. Anyway, whatever. Just a dawdler here making mistakes.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
don't know
hustle.
if that is that a hustler thing or a dawdler thing to be when there's a mistake, scrap it and start over, or versus cleverly edit it together and eh.
Yeah, provide more work for you later, right? The dawdler would be like, no, just start from scratch because it's easier to just walk away if we have to. Whereas the hustler is like, no, no, this is going to work. I recorded 50 versions of this and I'm going to piece it all together like some kind of comedy special. Right, you hustlers? Anyway, um, but yeah, hustlers. Who's going to want to listen to this shit? I don't know. But um, I want to kind of throw out there some definitions because I did my minimal amount of research for this particular uh, episode, which was just going to be about hustlers and dawdlers, where we're going to mostly focus on the hustlers, I guess. And I went to the Urban Dictionary because that's where Google said go. And so what Urban Dictionary has, and I guess, and you know, clarify for me, Urban Dictionary, because I'm just an old man. What do I know? But people can just put in there. It's like a Wikipedia thing, right? Just be like, I
That's how
think
I
this is
understand it. Yep.
okay. All right. So, um, top definition is to have the courage, confidence, self-belief, and self-determination to go out there and work it out until you find the opportunities you want in life. So a sentence with the word hustle in it would be, I need to hustle to make it as a musician. The next one would be working hard, usually towards the common goal of creating an income. All Jack does is hustle. You should see his bank account. Third version of hustle is anything you need to do to make money, be it selling cars, drugs, your body. I'm literally reading verbatim what's written. If you making money, you hustling. So a sentence there would be, I've been working 2 jobs trying to stay on my hustle and make this money namin. Sorry, that one
Yeah,
is harder to
Faulkner would be proud. I can tell already.
read.
The
Yeah.
dialect verbatim.
Another person just like gives you two options. They're like, make money, doing something slightly shady. And the next one is dance from the 70s. So anyway, that's a nice potpourri of definitions. And so from that, I glean maximizing effort towards a passion is a big part of it. You got to do whatever you can do to make money or survive in society. like the plants and the animals in ecosystems. That's another kind of look at it. There's some kind of deliberate, illegal, or shady activity, usually at a cost to others. Um, anyway, the
Yeah,
big
I
one
feel
though,
like the
no,
shadiness aspect seems to be kind of a definition two style thing to me. Um,
hmm
like there's the whole you got conned or something is you got somebody hustled me, or
yeah,
at the poker table I got hustled, but that's significantly different, I think, than the primary motif that I was detecting in these highfalutin urban dictionary entries was the pursuit of what some call the almighty dollar. That hustling seems, at least in America 2018, heavily correlated with the acquisition of wealth. And if that were accepted as the definition, then I would be not only not offended, but proud to be counted among the Dawdlers as someone who doesn't much care for uh, capital and capitalism as my pursuit. If you're interested instead in ideas or beauty or anything else that sounds nice, I'm not really going to hustle for money. I don't care. I don't want it. I don't need it. I want the things that it can facilitate. And not being interested in or willing to hustle for money is often troublesome, but I
well,
can't make myself do it.
yeah. Well, and but like I think what when I watch these videos on YouTube, like for instance, Gary V, or who, I don't even know who he is. I didn't do a deep dive, but there was a guy talking about hustling.
I
And
haven't seen the videos, but I can just picture him in my mind already. I think maybe a
yes,
Tim Ferriss type. Do you know that guy?
yeah, just a
Yeah.
lot of energy and just sort of, we could do it, which is again, that's the motto or something of hustling is we can do it. The kind that you're talking about anyway, not the shady kind, the kind where
Right.
it's about outworking other people. It's about just, never stopping until, well, there is no stopping, I think, for hustlers. They talk about this whole thing about reaching a goal, but from what I see when I watch these videos, they're always talking about just like, they skipped the weekend and just worked all the way through it because they're always hustling. Um, and to me, the hustling for the money is sort of part of it. But I think a lot of those people, if they heard what you said, they'd be like, no, 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 no. You can hustle for beauty. You can hustle. They would make exceptions because their hustle philosophy, the hustler's philosophy, is for one and all. It's about, this is where I think it breaks into this sort of almost self-help thing. Like we would be perfect for them to just be like, I want to see you on the elliptical tomorrow, and I want you to do something. Here's 5 points, and you follow those daily, and if you do that, you'll be successful at whatever it is you want to do. Everybody wants to do something. That's kind of how I see a lot of people legitimize what it is they're doing. But I wonder if there is a negative component that also moves with that. That the hustle, because I kind of think that if you're out working people out there working, um, then it's possible that you're living by this idea that there's winners and losers, and if you make it to the top, you can say, hey, they just didn't hustle as hard or whatever. And so then it starts to put content and ideas and all that and beauty, whatever, on the backslide, because who's going to outwork somebody for beauty? Who's going to outwork each other for ideas and stuff? Um,
So are you kind of
they're
saying that the hustle as a methodology whose content
right.
neutral You can hustle for any goal you name. So, okay, what do you like, man? Oh, you like philosophy? You like ideas? That's fine. We can hustle about that. Here's the program. You're going to read 100 pages by noon every day, and you're going to write a chapter of your book. Then you're going to record a 2-hour podcast every Thursday night, And
Right.
here's the 12 rules for life. Here's the rules for hustling at whatever you want. You can do it. Those kind of people. Well, all right. Something to it. I think discipline can help. Planning can help. And that you can insert virtually any, or so it seems, end goal in mind. But I also then, as soon as I think that or say that, want to question it. Are there any goals which are actually better pursued with quote-unquote less work? What is this work anyway, and why is it inherently valuable or assumed to always be the winning methodology?
This is how Dawdlers do it. You cut out. And I heard apology, I think. Was that the last word?
I would never apologize. No. I think I was saying methodology a bunch of times.
Yeah. There you go.
I was asking, I can get that the hustle methodology works at least part of the time. But is there any end which may be more successfully pursued with quote-unquote less work? Like, what is this work thing, and why do we assume it always wins the race?
Well, I mean, what do we want to call work? I mean, we often talk about thinking and doing, and that those things we tend to categorize as somehow they're separate. And I would say the way you're using the word work, that's a doer's activity, and there might be other pursuits that maybe thinkers would be better at. And we'd have to sit here and hash out what we think those things are.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, what about, for example, something like the amorphous, undefinable trait or product that we call creativity? Might it be the case that, or novelty or something, might there be some domains in which your product is superior on this dimension of, if we can define it well enough that it makes sense, that if what you do, so I think, for example, of this musician archetype, and does the musician who is their own manager and gets up in the morning and one of their projects is, I need to book myself for Thursday through Saturday night this week. Who am I going to call? If that's their project, versus the person who wakes up late, eats cereal with beer on it, gets high, sits on their couch, puts Rick and Morty on the TV, and noodles away at their guitar for a while. Maybe the latter comes up with something on whatever metric, a better piece of art than the person whose projects include primarily the hustly projects of, I need gigs,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think this sounds like a split between something like quality and something like quantity. Gigs seems like a quantifiable thing. Like, you can count them up. I'm out there, 365 days a year. The guy who's out there 159, I should be, getting along better in music than that person. But, is your music any good? And most of the time, I'm guessing that it isn't. I would we say that the top 40 musicians and, musicians in the top 40, singers, people that maybe don't even write their music, that they're all just playing the hustle game, right?
Yep.
But then there's, you always, especially when people make it to college, but I don't know about these days because of the internet and how um, fluid it can be for people. So maybe even younger than college age, but they're finding like acts out there, in Bandcamp or whatever that really nobody listens to, but they could be great music. But they're getting outworked or whatever. And so more and more people are putting out crap. And just as a sheer result of the fact that they're willing to put it out there anyway, because what their game is the hustle. It's not the good stuff. It's not the quality, it's the quantity. And so that to me seems like it can be a bit of a negative, And so it's not just simply, hey, I'm pursuing money. Pursuit of money, I think, can have an impact on the pursuit of an actual good life. Because after all, they're not having a weekend. So I don't know how, I mean, they say it gives them energy, but I don't know.
Well, I would think, and this might be a slightly different topic that we can come back to, but if we take the pursuit of concept, anytime you say my pursuit is of an end which is not directly related to the endeavor. So if what I'm interested in or what I'm trying to do or care about is, making a really good philosophical argument, if any of my energy is expended towards the end of publishing a paper or, or getting a job in this college, or if the end is different than the more direct task, that seems to me likely to diminish the quality with which you will produce something. I make a lot out of human finitude, right? And if we are, as it seems to me, finite, there's only so much time and energy we have to expend on various projects. So the more time you spend hustling after ends that are not directly related to the creative project, it seems to me that it'll probably hinder the quality, whether it's music, whether it's science, whatever it is. If your goal is getting tenure or signing with the record label rather than making an important scientific discovery or writing a really great tune, those are the things that I think. Can we just bring our ends closer to the projects at hand and not look after money or look after these other externalized, institutionalized goals that distract us from the projects? And maybe that's a way that Dawdlers can at least tell a story to fool themselves into justifying their laziness or whatever it is that I'm doing.
Right. Well, I always thought that the hustlers should find a Dawdler and then just hustle the shit out of the Dawdler stuff, because clearly the Dawdler's just sitting there. Of course, that is probably what happens, like people who are writing a book or whatever are constantly being pestered by, if not their editor, then their agent or somebody, just constantly being like, come on, when's the book going to be done, and so I guess in some ways there is that kind of relationship where people recognize that maybe they're not the right person to write the most excellent book or whatever, because they just realized they just didn't have it. But like, these other people, they may have also realized that, well, I'm good at organizing things. I'm good at planning or what have you. And that they might have something to say about that too. Of course, there's an example I'm thinking of an individual who I, of course, can't remember his name, so I can probably try and find it. But he was an agent, a music agent. He was an agent for like Alice Cooper and um, a number of different acts that are well known. And you know, he just had the right kind of hustle, and he was able to get these people to places they wanted to go without them having to worry about all that kind of stuff. So that would be a nice synthesis. But I don't see that often happening. Hustlers hustle for themselves more often, it seems.
Right. I mean, I think the way you phrased it was that a hustler needs to find some dawdlers or whatever. That
Right.
seems more questionable to me, but I could definitely see how a dawdler could benefit from enlisting a hustler to their projects.
Well, but the
Um,
problem with the Dawdler is how will they ever hustle a hustler? You know, hustlers, if they can, I think the good hustlers then would be the ones that could actually recognize quality, you know, and the other ones that are so, fervently trying to like make it would maybe, just they wouldn't appeal. Whatever products that they're putting out there would never really truly in the end appeal, no matter how many days they put their efforts in. Um, there's just no beating a really great writer or painter or something like that, or scientist who is writing a book or something. That kind of thing was
right.
what I was thinking of. And it's the guy is Shep Gordon, and there's a book out, or there's a movie out there called Supermensch, and he was um, this, I guess, legendary agent, and he, obviously Alice Cooper was one of these people, but he's one of those people who has all these crazy stories of going being in LA, totally completely without any money at all, completely broke, and he like goes in and at this pool or something like that, and he sees this woman screaming and a man's on top of her, and when he goes to like pull the guy off because he thinks she's being raped, it's the woman punches him, and it turns out to be oh God, now look at me, I'm like, what's your name? Um, the Bobby McGee lady. I'm of course never.
Oh, Janis Joplin?
Janis Joplin. Yeah, thank you. Anyway, he seemed like a good hustler. This Shep Gordon guy.
So to bring in the misanthropic point of view, that seems to depend on a marketplace that has taste. That
Yeah,
the hustlers need to go find a high quality dawdler because they create better work. And then I can do the hustle part and disseminate their work to the masses. But the way it appears to some of us right now, the evaluators of these works are not high quality judges of the work. So then the dawdler becomes the middleman that the hustler can skip. They're just like, whatever, you'll listen to my songs and you'll fucking like them. And people do. So then they don't need to go find a dawdler to pay to have written their songs. They can just say whatever poor quality poem they manage to string together and sell it because people will buy.
yeah. Well, that's the fear, and I know that probably happens left and right. But the hope, of course, is that would be a positive spin. I wouldn't
Right.
think that it would be just a world full of like hustlers helping dawdlers,
Well,
get their quality out there.
to employ a cheesy analogy, it's like, the bird cannot fly who does not both flap and glide, right? So we need the hustle is the flap and the dawdle is the glide. And in order to locomote, you need a mixture of both. So would that we could have a society that included in proper mixture and teamed up one after the other, so that you didn't shoot off into the atmosphere or crash into the ground. One hustler
Yeah.
per Dawdler,
Perfect.
in equal
I
measure.
like it. Yeah, no, I like it. That's perfect. That works for me. All right, podcast over. Beep. Um, yeah, that seems that's my view. Um, I would share that view anyway. I don't know if that's your view. You're just
Why
summarizing
can't
it.
we have a society of all Dawdlers?
Good question. Because would you have a society? Or would you just have a bunch of individuals walking around every once in a while sharing some stuff? Do we, I mean, I think your question is, do we need hustlers? I'm
Yeah, what do we
guessing
need
that
these hustlers for?
I think we need hustlers because they're just never satisfied. I think a dawdler is clearly dawdling because, yeah, they may have things that are frustrating and they may not be satisfied with, their quality of life in terms of like, they're dirt poor or whatever, or they're just things are, there's a lot of uncertainty in their futures because they're not just going and grabbing it by the throat. They're doing other things like painting and writing and what have you. Um,
Okay, so yeah, this
this
is
might sound, yeah,
dawdling as a decadence, as a luxury, if you are in the nasty, brutish state of nature, you will probably find yourself hustling or not around to do either anymore. Is that the sort of...
yeah. Dawdlers, I'm gonna say, whether or not this claim has any argument I can come up with right now, and because I'm a dawdler, I'm too lazy to do it. But this is a nice excuse. Anyway, it's my podcast, and I could do what I want. And anyway, it's our podcast, Harlan. Sorry. But I don't know. I just thought, dawdlers are an offshoot from hustlers. Every damn animal in nature is a hustler. Even when lions are just lolling about, just is Lally and Lally is my son's girlfriend, lollying about.
Lolly, I think. Yes, I like
Yeah.
this.
Anyway, just lollying about, uh, you know,
Lollygagging, perhaps.
lollygagging about whatever the freaking word is. Um, when they're just doing that in like by the acacia tree or whatever, they're still hustling because they're saving it up, and they're going to scare the living Christ out of these poor antelope that have probably a good idea of what's coming, I suppose. I don't know. But everything's a hustle in the state of nature, quote unquote. But here we have other ways, that we can live, especially at the high end of our society, I suppose. But there are some people who, in our society, I don't know, it's changed over time, evolved, what have you, that have been able to still pursue, a rags to riches life through quality, through developing their craft, and somehow, probably a lot of it just due to luck, were able to get themselves the ability to make a living off of it. And I guess, I don't know, again, that would give me also hope for a future where dawdlers have a bigger place in it. But I don't know if dawdlers can do it without hustlers. That's my thinking. But
Mm-hmm. Well, in the long tradition of making these ultimately meaningless, I think, arbitrary dichotomies of everybody is an X or a Y, and we can mutually exclusively and exhaustively chop our ontology into two categories
it's great.
of those who have one property or another. I think most times that those are developed, if one has enough ingenuity,
Right.
you can describe everybody as either X or Y, as I think you just attempted to do. With like, all right, well, in the state of nature, there's only hustlers. But it feels like a bit of a reach, and maybe you can defend it, to say that even the lions napping beneath the trees, themselves are hustling because they, on some level, realize that they are marshaling their strength to hustle better when next they hustle, and that itself is a hustle, or but could not, if one is allowed that degree of metaphor and extension and stretch and analogy, couldn't we just say, well, everyone is always dawdling because only Deadpool gives maximum effort ever, and if you worked hard enough, describe everything as a dawdle as well.
I suppose. Yeah, I mean, if you're at one extreme, you can always look back and be like, duh, Dawdlers. But I guess I was thinking more in terms of the idea that, you know, all the organisms in an ecosystem, it's, 24/7, 365 days a year. There are no breaks, you know, uh, and it's pretty much just, this view, and I'm not saying I adhere to it, but I'm just throwing it out there as a view, but the view that even when you are resting, there because you can't keep going all the time or you'd burn out before you had an opportunity to reproduce or do something else, And so, yeah, that's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. You're going to have some work to do to convince me that hibernating is hustling. But it's an unfair request. And, like I was saying, I think anytime someone plays this game, this language game of we're going to chop everything into two and say, and of course, any individual that's worth discussing is complex and probably exhibits both traits at various times. Everybody hustles and dawdles part of the time and about certain things.
Is that well, if you can hear me, my
You're,
fellow Dawdler,
you're back now.
yeah, you broke up. Ah, sounds good.
Technology.
Good thing there's editing. What was it you were saying?
Oh, mine broke up too. Okay, I was saying anybody that's worth discussing is complex and probably hustles part of the time and dawdles part of the time. And, so this whole thing is just a language game, and we shouldn't make too much of it. But I was challenging you to prove to me that hibernation counted as hustling.
Wow. Well, yeah, it's like it's just the longer version of resting.
Which also doesn't sound very hustly.
No, but resting is like, the idea being that um the amount of energy you can expend in a day is limited. And so, if you're not expending energy, then you need to kind of slow down and take some time before you can do it again. Even hustlers in the big city got to take a rest.
Yeah. Hurry up and wait. Know your limitations. That kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the can't be all things to all moments or whatever. Hustle is not, I mean, I say it's 24/7 and that it's 365 days a year, but that, it doesn't mean to say that, resting isn't some other facet of the hustle in nature, quote unquote nature. That's kind of what I would say. It's just another method. Whereas the Dawdler, they wake up and they're like, get something done today. I don't know. I'm hungry. That's the Dawdler. But they're, I hope we have enough bandwidth. I have something I'm going to throw out there.
Okay.
So The one thing I will use like multi-level selection thing. Um, and I'll try and be quick so that if it breaks up, me going on and on, it will be okay. But essentially, you've got, some gradient of cooperation, right? And just think of a bell curve, and those, the vast majority cooperate about 50% of the time, and that makes the bell curve. So it goes away as you get towards, cooperating none of the time or cooperating all the time. Well, imagine a scenario where you end up, you know, in a group where there's just happens to be more cooperators that are like, 70% of the time versus another group that forms with cooperators that do it like maybe, 20 or 30% of the time. And so in this population, where you have two majorities or whatever, you have these cooperators. The thing about the cooperators that do it like 70% of the time is that in a way they kind of become each other's resource. So there are times potentially when you don't do anything to acquire the resource that you need to keep going or whatever. And so in that sense, you kind of can start to have individuals that spend time just in a whole day, not hustling for some grub, because grub was hustled by others, and because we're cooperators and we share and do all that kind of stuff, you just get some. And maybe next time it's you who's out there who's hustling. But in the group that does it much less than 50%, let's say, everybody's hustling. Everybody's trying to keep, because they don't cooperate. They don't share very often. And so if you're going to get something to eat today, it's probably going to come down to you, and so that's kind of my thinking about this is that, with human societies, I should step back from this whole all nature thing and just say, like, with social dynamics, with, sociality, maybe there's a, cooperating and sharing and all is beneficial to individuals and allows for the Dawdler to rise.
So this seems like another primacy of the hustle story. That the
Yeah,
Dawdlers
that's
are
right.
the free riders that are taking advantage of the surplus consumer goods that were acquired by the hustlers. And if
Sort
they're,
of, not really. I
how
would
does it
say
differ?
it's different than that because, like I was saying, if you're in the vast majority group of hustling, some days you don't have to hustle, some days you do, and in the group where the vast majority are hustling, pretty much you can count on almost every day you have to hustle. And so that's all I'm trying to say is imagine, we start to get the division of labor and, those kind of, interactions going on between people cooperating. You don't have to hustle for everything. Some days you just, you get to take off. Hustler's Paradise is on the weekend or whatever. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say is that, it's it's a it's not an everyday thing. It's not that some people are just going to always slack. Maybe that's a next step in that process. And there's probably punishments for those who slack or whatever. But the idea that you don't always have to spend all your daily activities hustling for food or for whatever it is, what would you do instead, in that time? That's kind of what I'm asking. And so maybe that's where, people start to create a craft or whatever. They have their side hustle. Oh shoot, everything's a hustle. No.
I know.
But
Now
like they
they've
have their other thing that they fool around with. The tinkering starts to, only in these social setups do they get to tinker and do all that kind of stuff.
the goddamn hustlers want to steal even our lute playing and sonnet writing and make it just a side hustle, where it too is acquisitive. The hustlers are never satisfied. So is this kind of I assume mimicry isn't the right word, but that you're saying that your energy expenditure strategy ought to be influenced by looking around and seeing what kind of society am I in. If I'm in one where most people are hustling, well, I would do well to select the hustle strategy as well, or I might suffer various social penalties.
Well, I would say it this way. Those in the hustle, the group that tends to not cooperate and share as much and not be as social, you're likely to have less success, getting anything from others. It's just something you can count on less. But those groups where you have people, hustling for each other and sharing and cooperating, there will be times when you don't have to. It'll just be a consequence of you. You wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, food. I guess I don't have to go. But like maybe every morning you get up to go out and get food, but not every morning do you feel like, or do you have to? And so, oh, well, today I guess I'll, work on this, tool to catch more food, whatever. And then maybe you happen upon and you're tinkering and you're fooling around, you're just doing, not much because your belly's full. Maybe that's when you actually happen upon something else, because you're sort of in a creative pursuit. And you're like, oh, wow, I wonder if this would work to catch that food better, or something like that.
So there's kind of a compromise strategy where if we describe alarms in the sense of I set my alarm to wake up at a given time in the morning as a kind of hustler technology, whereas the Dawdler sleeps until they're tired of it and then wakes up when their body is ready. That you're saying everybody adopts the hustler strategy of setting their alarm. But once you're awake, you can look around and say, oh, somebody else already did it. Or they did it yesterday and we still are working on a surplus, etc. So that today there is space to dawdle because I already defaulted to the hustle program when I set my alarm. But now I can back off and dawdle today because we have extra shit. But maybe tomorrow I'll have to just hustle all day.
Yeah. And maybe your hustle will prove beneficial to someone the next day after that because you've gotten all this extra stuff with your friends because you're cooperating on collecting and doing all these things, Like that's all I'm trying to say is that maybe something like sociality allows the Dawdler to arise. I love this. This is hilarious.
Wouldn't there be many potential defeaters of a system like that? Any sort of, for example, introduce greed to that system, such as some of us perceive America 2018 to function. There's never enough. So yeah, my bank account has $10 billion in it. I guess I can dawdle today. Nope. It's not enough. You must hustle for the sake of hustling. You must be number one, having more than you could ever spend on your own hedonistic pursuits is still insufficient. You must hustle just to hustle. Seems to be the way we function. So couldn't there be, in any society that were designed that way, as soon as they have some kind of emotional level pathology, that it would no longer be so utopian? And like hustle seems to potentially be a fever, a sickness, and that you can just burn yourself out with it. No, more. I got to, pump faster and do more, and then you fry.
Yeah, no, okay. So one of the things I would think is we can add to my cooperator sharing and, the person wakes up and says, I don't have to dawdle. Maybe we layer over that some people do just wake up and they're like, I don't care if there's a surplus. I got to go and hustle, and that there are some who almost every day wake up and they're like, yeah, I guess, I don't have to hustle because that dude over there is always busting his butt. But my thinking is that, there may always be those kinds of people, but in a cooperator sharing kind of thing where there might be some punishments to not doing that, people might, in this group that happens to find themselves in this type of situation, they might tend to curtail that on their own, perhaps, because I mean, the majority of them that would kind of wake up and be like, oh, blah blah blah. They might wake up. You know what? I owe it to this person because I like them. I don't know. I'm gonna get up and hustle today. And then there'd be other people who are like, I gotta hustle. And maybe, they realize, I should probably take some time and be with this person who has broken their leg out there hustling or whatever. Like maybe there's people that just have a tendency to kind of slow that down. And then that those that really are just dawdlers and those that really are heavy on the hustle would just kind of be fewer. But I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
Is there a... So, I mean, what I'm hearing now is some version of the concept of the evolutionarily stable strategy. Like, are you assuming, guessing, do you have reason to think that any society that has a gradient of dawdle to hustle will somehow, one ought not say magically when talking to a scientist, but will
say it,
arrive at a balance where some people will tend towards the dawdle and some toward the hustle, and it will eventually all work out. And I guess that's is that what you meant originally by the multi-level selection? Is this kind of a group selectionist point, or what does that mean?
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to ultimately finish with the group selection stuff. I was just going to use kind of the basic altruism, cooperator, defector kind of group and kind of game theory like thing that they do. And I was just kind of talking about it, hoping to paint a picture of like a unimodal distribution of cooperators from cooperating to or not operating, having that be at 50% or whatever. And then over time, let's just say something happens and the two self, cooperating more and some of it finds itself cooperating less. I then started to contrast the two. And then they kind of have, so if it's a bimodal distribution, they kind of each are sort of 50% used to be the, 50% cooperating than it was. And that's kind of where focusing necessarily on one or the other or anything like that.
Are you either claiming, guessing, or hoping that
almost free associating with the idea, this notion that your Dawdler would evolve out of that, because they didn't have to hustle.
Oh, okay. Always. I was wondering if where you were going to end up was that the optimal arrangement of any individual was to be a hustle-dawdle amphibian that could, set your alarm, but then, you could go either way depending on your environmental conditions.
No, I was just taking it in a fun direction. The Origin of the Dawdler. A book I'll never write.
Well, right. We can't ever write a book. That's a fucking hustle job.
Yeah.
I mean, all of us Dawdlers have a drawer full of unfinished novels in the lower right hand of our desks, right?
Well, hopefully. But if we had that amphibious hustler Dawdler nature, for those that are just like, there must be Dawdlers out there that have hardly ever started anything. Their self-doubt is like a blight. That all the little saplings and they're just killed.
Well, all right. Check out this additional embodied metaphor for hustlers and dawdlers. And again, still admittedly coming at you from a biased perspective. Dawdlers are where progress comes from, because hustlers are on a treadmill and dawdlers are wandering in the wilderness. But still, they're the ones that are moving somewhere. Because the hustler's goal isn't proximate. It isn't locomote. Their goal is burn calories, lose weight, look better, feel better. Anytime you have these distal goals, like profit, like losing weight, then you're totally content to run on a treadmill and you don't go anywhere. Whereas the dawdler, just, they tie one of their shoes and not the other, and they they stroll in the woods, and maybe they get lost and they're in thought. And it seems to be a dawdler motto to say, let me think about that. Whereas the hustler motto is always, I've got your answer. They've got to have something, even if it's of poor quality, lame, whatever. It is at hand. Hustlers are at-handed, and dawdlers are thoughtful. And so, as someone who prefers progress to running in place, that's another motivator for a society to include a few dawdlers.
Yeah, I like all of that. I actually don't have any real issue with that characterization. The proximal, they're just not, they don't do the proximal. They're all ultimate. I like that.
I don't like it. I wish they wouldn't do that.
Well, I mean, I like that characterization.
Right. The foibles of agreement ends discussion prematurely.
So do you feel like we have accomplished this discussion about hustlers and dawdlers and why we call this the Dawdlers Philosophy Podcast?
Well, I hope not. Or paradoxically, we would have failed at the same time.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think, is this a place where two dawdlers can agree to stop a podcast, or are we do we keep going?
I'm willing to agree to that. I mean, once it's been said,
That's true. But what would I know? I'm not thinking about these things. I'm just dawdling along.
Authoritarianism seems to be a hustler trait. To decree that, no, we will not stop.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't bring myself to say that.
I saw a box of raisins that looked tasty to me. I think I want to stop talking now and shove raisins in my mouth. Something like that.
I'll allow it.
Thank you.
There'll be other days, other topics to dawdle on about.
We will definitely dawdle on. That's what we do. All right. I guess this is how dawdlers end a podcast.
Not with a bang, but
No,
is a whimper the opposite of a bang?
Oh, for sure. Just the way we like it. Two categories.
Well, it was fun. We'll try again.
Fun. We will try again. We could fade ourselves out. Just no, until it gets so quiet.